Welcome to Face2Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face2Face.
So my next interview is with Sami Khan. We talk about his new film, his new Oscar-nominated film, St. Louis Superman. It's a film that you're going to want to see. It's in theaters now. I'm pretty sure we even talked about this a little bit. It's going to be on video on demand, I would imagine, in the not so distant future, but I guess that's going to depend on whether or not it wins an Oscar. So first off, congratulations to everyone involved in the film. And it's a story you're going to want to step into. It's about relationships. It's about being a good dad. It's about being an African American, and it's about Black Lives Matter. Not only the campaign and the push and the initiative and so on, but it's about what it means to sort of make sense of where we are currently in our culture, not only here in Canada and the U.S., but it's a global conversation, and it's about community. It's about storytelling, and I learned a little bit about battle rapping. And if you've seen 8 Mile and Eminem and all of that, that's about as far as I had stepped into that. But it comes out in this film in a really unique and interesting way. And this is an important film. It's also something that's just adding to the conversation on a variety of levels. So you're going to want to step in. It's a documentary short, so watch it and wait for it. The conversation with Sami's coming up. We had a whole lot of fun at one point, and I hope this doesn't scare you off, those of you who aren't academics, because it's not really an academic conversation at all. But at one point I felt like, wow, I should be taking notes here. Sami was really just kind of riffing on all things, I guess you could say, important. We get into the film, we get into the story, and that's about all I'm going to tell you. You might want to pull it up on IMDb as well. There's some reviews out there for sure you can read. So wait for it, but it's coming. I was going to say coming soon to a theater near you, but it's already there. But the conversation is coming soon to your digital theater in the very next a few minutes. So stay tuned, and don't forget davidpecklive.com for more information about my writing and my public speaking. You can access a copy of Real Change is Incremental there. I'd love for you to purchase that. And if you want to advertise with us here on Face2Face, you can certainly do that. You can support the work I'm doing through Patreon. Engel Jones, we just had another sponsor. Thank you so much for that. We've got our latest Patreon subscriber, so that's wonderful news. Slowly building there. But if you want to advertise with us, you can. And we've got a newsletter. We've got banner ads on the website. We have the ability to do shout-outs during our conversation. So please get in touch with me if you're interested in that, and we're actively pursuing a few. What else can I tell you? Oh, exciting for 2020. We've got a couple live conversations coming up. Film.ca is going to be one of our sponsors for a on-stage conversation with John Walker and his new film in October 2020 at the Oakville Centre here in Oakville, Ontario. And also in April, we're going to be interviewing Emma Hansen about her new book, Still. And she's the daughter of Rick Hansen. You might know that name. And so wait for it. Look for more information about that in the newsletter, and I'll be talking more about it on the podcast. And then, of course, don't forget Rabble.ca, also hosted there at a platform that is deep and wide. Podcasters, bloggers, writers, thinkers, journalists, news for the rest of us, Rabble.ca. And stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. Coming up, Oscar-nominated St. Louis Superman and a conversation with Sami Khan. Well, welcome to Face2Face. We're joined by a very special guest here with us today, talking about his new Oscar-nominated film, St. Louis Superman. We have Sami Khan with us to go a little deeper on all things filmmaking and social change, and maybe talk a little bit about the craziness of what it means to be nominated for an Oscar. Sami, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So you're a co-director of this film. Can you talk a little bit about that and give us a bit of context before we sort of dive in? Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Is that fair?
absolutely. Yeah. So we were actually, my co-director Smriti Mundra was actually approached to make a short documentary by AJ Witness, and they make like observational verite documentaries, and then
And that's Al, and Sammy, that's Al Jazeera.
yeah, that's Al Jazeera. Yeah, Al Jazeera English. And it's one of the few sort of places that's like supporting verite filmmaking worldwide and like commissioning verite films. Because like independent film is like really hard
Sure.
all
Yeah.
around the world. So they approached Smriti, and then Smriti and I had been making films in India around the same time. I was working on a fiction film called Koya, and she was working on a documentary called A Suitable Girl, which played Tribeca a couple years ago.
Hmm.
And so and she's also married to my best friend. So we have been close friends for a long, long time, and we're looking for the right opportunity to work together. And when Witness Al Jazeera approached Smriti, she like literally forwarded me the email, and it's like, "Do you want to work with me on this?" And so that was sort of the beginning of the project. And then we talked to the commissioning producer Poe at Witness, and she had sort of like theme areas that she wanted to a potential film to explore. And I was living in the United States at the time, and Poe was very interested in this idea of like the sort of the resistance to Trump and how that might manifest itself in like electoral politics. So like Black Lives Matter, whether they could translate their clout in communities into elected office. And
Hmm.
we searched around for a few months, I feel like, pitching different stories and investigating different angles and different political candidates until Smriti pitched Bruce, and there we recognized the golden opportunity we had, where this was a story that just it didn't simply satisfy the sort of immediate need for like this kind of issuey film about 2018 and politics, but it also had this profound depth to it. And if you see the film, you understand just like the vulnerability that Bruce shows and
Yeah.
the honesty he shows with his battles with mental health, and sort of his relationship to his son, and trying to navigate being African American in the United States in the 21st century.
So many questions, really, so many questions. It seems to me. And by the way, I don't think I've said this yet, but congratulations on the film. I mean, it's everyone needs to see this, and what's beautiful about it too is, and I think this is a question I'd love to ask you from a writing and a production perspective and so on. But it's a short, and it's not a huge investment of time, folks. So there's there's a reason to watch it as well. But it's a beautiful film, and I love how any great film or any great doc to me is about so many things. There's so much more going on than meets the eye, and there's layers. And I mean, this is about parenting, and it's about relationships, it's about politics, it's about pushing back. And so many great T-shirts, by the way, show up in this film. I don't know, it's like there's just so many. It's wonderful. I don't know if that was intentional on your part or not,
That's
but I
Bruce. No, that's just Bruce. That's
it's, yeah,
Bruce's.
well, Bruce has got a
Yeah.
couple, but there was a few in the background as well. I
Oh,
mean,
really?
yeah, I caught somebody wearing a "I am determined" T-shirt, which I just thought, okay, there's the theme for the film. Um, so you had to sort of go looking for this story in a sense. It wasn't like you were walking the streets with a camera and went, okay, we got to start. Here's this story is I'm passionately connected to this. Got to go in. It kind of went the other way. You were sort of commissioned. We got. I mean, obviously, there's lots of stories like Bruce's around. I would imagine, but yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that sort of that creative sort of splash and ripple, if that makes sense?
Does sort of how we found our way to Bruce?
Yeah, like 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 I've interviewed a lot of documentarians over the years, and you're kind of, oh, you meet somebody and you go, oh, got to make a film about this family, or wow, there's a story we got to dive into. It sounds like it kind of came almost through a back door for you guys, which is really cool and serendipitous and deeply relational. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it did and it didn't, and we were, in the sense where it kind of fell on our laps in the sense that they, Poe, the commissioning producer, approached us to make the film.
Mm,
Um, but I think the thing is, there's not many stories like Bruce's, but it's like when you read about Bruce and his life and what he's done, it's sort of like a no-brainer, It's like
right. Yeah.
why hasn't
Why
this
hasn't this been? Yeah. Why hasn't
yeah.
it been done before?
And
Yeah.
the
Yeah. No,
reason
for
why
sure.
that was is because Bruce had some bad experiences with,
Mm,
with journalists, with film crews, and, had like, kind of sworn off um,
right.
filmmakers. So, it was just a matter of sort of like pitching us the story and being like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is
Yeah.
what an
Yeah.
incredible person, this battle rapper turned
Yeah.
politician
Yeah. Yeah.
who is
We
trying
gotta.
to get
We.
a bill passed to honor his brother who died from gun violence. And, and then there's all the things that we can't like really summarize or quantify, like you alluded to, like his
Mm,
relationship with his son in particular, which was just the kind of lightning in a bottle that we captured over those
right.
4 months in 2018.
I was just going to say, why don't you give us sort of a short overview of the film? But I mean, I think you just kind of did. You sort of so I think I can launch off on that and ask what the heck is a battle rapper? Okay, so sorry that I don't know that and I didn't research that, but you it shows up in the film. It's a great moment, clearly a part of Bruce's life and a real. It's just a brilliant way to I guess express. A whole lot of passion, commitment, and anger. At least that's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah, I mean, battle rap. If folks have seen like 8 Mile or are familiar
Yeah,
with
of course.
Eminem's rise, they kind of get an idea of what battle rap is. I mean, it's changed, and I think Bruce is part of the change in battle rap in the last
Hmm.
10, 15 years, where and it's reflective of broader society, where
Sure.
Bruce as a battle rapper is embracing honestly his struggles. He's not just trying to take down his opponent and
Right. Right.
but he's trying to sort of engage emotionally with the audience. And some of his opponents are um, politically very radical, let's put it that way. And so it's a forum for them to convince people politically about their cause. It's one opponent Bruce had a few months ago, and this battle rap just dropped last week, I think it was.
Hmm.
Really champions the African American community and is like quite radical about the idea of reconciliation with white society. And and it's kind of like when Bruce was facing off against him, they brought up the comparison of Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X, and
Hmm.
whether that's apt. And the
Hmm.
thing Bruce brings up is like at the end of their lives, both King and Malcolm were quite similar politically. The sort of King became more radical, and Malcolm sort of, became a little more in search of reconciliation. So I guess that's like a kind of left turn to answer your question. But I mean, battle rap is what it sounds like. It's two guys on stage,
Surrounded by people.
surrounded by people.
Think boxing, right? Like that's sort of where I went, and I've seen 8 Mile, of course, and I mean I kind of get what battle rapping is, but I think Sammy, what I love about how and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it doesn't frankly really matter. But for me, he is a battle rapper. At the legislature, he's taken it on, right? He's kind of taken it all on, and I just love the line. I think he says to maybe his son something about telling your story is going to help somebody, and I just so
Yeah.
love
He
that.
said he says it at Mission
Like
St. Louis, where he's speaking
yeah,
to a group of formerly incarcerated
That's
Man,
right. That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. And that, I guess that's what I kind of that sort of that tie in back to, how did you find the story? Because I mean, I've done a lot of traveling and I work in international development, as my listeners know, many countries. And I kind of believe you could sort of, flying over a country anywhere in the world, you could parachute out with a camera and an H6 and start making a film. You know what I mean? Like there's just everybody's got a story, right? Everybody's got something to say, something to tell.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I think the thing that Bruce tries to show people is, you can be a sort of formal storyteller like Bruce is, or like you and I are, but you could also just be a regular person. And
right.
storytelling, I mean, it's literally it's why we've survived as a species for,
Nice.
however these like few 100,000 years, is the idea of storytelling to make sense of our place in the universe. And for some people, that challenge is like much harder because you're a Syrian refugee in a camp in Turkey, or you're an African American man who's lost your brother to gun violence at a really young age. So even on just like an individual human level, just to make sense of your place in the world, it can give you peace. Now the other thing that we were cognizant of as the filmmakers was the fact that Bruce has been through incredible trauma. He lost his brother. He saw his brother die in front of him when he was, very, very young. And here we are showing up trying to, you know, get him to share that story with the world. So we were cognizant of the fact that the storytelling could also re-traumatize Bruce.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that informed, how we approached the filmmaking of it, and also how we worked with Bruce and sort of weren't there to just kind of extract a story from him
Right.
and move on, which is the experience Bruce had had before.
His 9-year old brother, Chris.
Yeah,
Yeah.
died in front of him.
While he was outside just playing.
Hmm. Yeah, he
Just
was picked up and used as a human shield, and he died.
so I mean, and obviously there's way more than just one experience that pushed him into this, but that's I think June 7th was the date for that. And I love how the film opens again, date. And I love this incremental, like sort of metaphorical nature of this, Sammy. It's so beautiful that these moments in time, how important they are, how important the people are that we meet and the people we're listening to and the conversations we're having and the hands we're shaking and so on. They're kind of all connected. And I love the way he says to his son, August 9th, you're gonna learn about August 9th, and I'll tell you when you're 5. Right, as if right there's this. It's almost like I was going to use the phrase tipping point, but I don't know. I kind of feel like everything's a bit of a tipping point, if if you know what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that was just, I don't know. It's just like I said, it was lightning in a bottle. This,
Mm,
that we weren't even supposed to. We were shooting verité, and we weren't even supposed to be filming Bruce that day. But I just kind of
mm,
picked up the camera to capture that opening scene, and saw the way King and Bruce were just being playful with one another, and you just have to, with Bruce, you just have to like turn on the camera, make sure it's in focus, and something will happen
and
that,
something will happen.
yeah, that will be revelatory, politically or dramatically or emotionally. And there's just some people in our lives in the world who are like that. They're rare,
Sure. Yep.
so we're fortunate to have been able to tell Bruce's story. But it is just Bruce's way of being, is
Mm,
quite remarkable, and so we just needed to find the best way to capture that would leave Bruce alone to just be the best that
right.
we
Right.
could, and then also find like the form, like the finished form of the film that paid tribute to the way he is.
What's with Bruce and the superheroes? I saw Wonder Woman in there. I saw Black Panther. I think maybe Superman for sure.
It
Um,
connects to the whole idea of storytelling.
mm,
Like Bruce is able to use pop culture
yeah,
in a way to connect to people. So he'll grab this piece of pop culture for this reason,
right.
and he was known as Superman to his constituents because of his willingness to go to bat for them, to do whatever it takes to help them. Like one of my favorite scenes that was unfortunately cut from the film. I was riding around with Bruce on like a really hot day in St. Louis. It was 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're just cruising around. He was at the bank, and he was wearing suit pants. And as we're driving through downtown St. Louis, Bruce, a couple of kids have their engine popped, and they're just like trying to get their car started again. And Bruce recognized them. They were they were mentees of his. And Bruce pulls over and spends like 45 minutes in his slacks, trying to help them get
Trying
their
to.
car
Uh,
going. So
that's great.
that's his superpower. So he uses that imagery of superheroes to connect with people, to motivate with people. He also, if you watch his battle rap, he uses like sitcoms a lot.
Mm,
We were talking earlier about sort of Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King, and he has one of my favorite battle raps of Bruce's, which isn't in the film, but you can find on YouTube. He is using like sitcoms from the 90s, and particularly black sitcoms from the 90s, like Martin. There was a sitcom called Martin with
right.
Martin Lawrence. And then he also talks about Malcolm in the Middle, and makes like a couple of brilliant just bars where he's using the references which get the audience excited, because they know that, but then he also uses it to get to this deeper political and emotional level in a way that's like totally brilliant.
He really humanizes, for me anyway. He really humanizes politics in a way, and sort of um, rebirths it in a way. I'm trying to think of the right word or phrase, but he buoys my spirits when it comes to being political, because there's that great image of him next to, and I don't know who it was, signing the document and saying, okay, let's make this a reality. And he's standing there in jeans and a t-shirt, right? It's fantastic, right? Here's this, like you say, this storyteller, this regular guy who will pull over and help some folks, friends, or maybe not, with their car troubles, and yet there he is, fighting back at a higher level as well. And I mean, isn't that why people get into politics in the first place?
It
Right?
should be,
Well, yeah, right,
it
right,
should be.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also where you know our film isn't like ultimately like a feel good movie about how you can
Mm,
affect change, but it also shows how difficult it is for
right.
somebody like that whose intentions are sort of honest, and they are part of their community, and how difficult it is practically, but more than that, just like emotionally and psychologically, to affect change. And I think it's pretty sad. I think there's a real crisis of democracy across the world, not just in the United States, in Brazil, in India, in the United Kingdom, and I don't think Canada is immune from that. I think one of the things that I remarked upon recently was that one of the chief cultural exports of Canada right now are YouTube fascists.
Hmm.
They're like
Wow.
a number of them who have like huge followings in the United States and across the world. Um, so it's like a dark time for
Hmm.
democracy, and it doesn't. There's no simple answer at the end of our film about how someone who is engaged and committed to their community can affect change. But I think for us, it's we're sort of throwing a question to the audience. It's like, how are we gonna move forward? How do we support politicians who actually do care, you know,
Right.
because the system is so stacked against them. And It's sort of designed to keep them out. So what do we do?
There's something, as I'm reflecting back earlier in the film, he talks, I think he's sort of reflecting on the disconnect within the legislature, the disparity of it, how the white versus the black representation, et cetera. And that kind of comes up at the end of the film as well, too, when he's talking about his son, the reality of being black and growing up black, and what is that going to mean for him, and how is that going to change, and will it change? Like all those things and those questions, right, that are so not only important but really challenging and nuanced as well. But he says a line near the beginning, something about not understanding my community, and later in the film talks about being able to listen better if you're actually a victim. I don't know. I'm kind of throwing this out, Sammy, to sort of tie that back into the what are we going to do, and isn't it about empathizing with the other to some degree, listening to the other? I mean, it's difficult to do when you're exporting YouTube fascists, I suppose, but isn't that the kind of stuff we got to rage back against and push back against by attending and listening to others?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's really important. I think also it's just an appreciation for certain facts that are just historical facts, which I think are difficult for some people to hear. Bruce says near the beginning of the film, when we're going to Jefferson City, the capital of Missouri, with him, that the system wasn't built for us. And I think, like in the United States, that's true. I mean, it's an economic system that was built on slavery. It's a political system that was built around the disenfranchisement of African Americans. It was sort of this like small R Republican system has features like the Electoral College, which were explicitly designed to empower the slaveholding states. I mean, those are just historical facts, and they're
Sammy, when you say they're hard to hear, I guess you sort of mean it's we kind of don't want to believe that, right? On some level.
Yeah, I mean, we live in
Yeah.
such an ahistorical moment. I think
Right.
it's social media is sort of that getting seduced by the outrage of the moment, and
Nice.
memes, whether they're political or not. That the thing that I worry about is like we lose track of history, of like our shared history, whether it's in the U.S. slavery, in Canada the genocide of indigenous population. I mean, those are sort of foundational uh, tenets of each country, and they're it's not like everything is bad or everything is good, but let's have an honest reckoning with the sort of horror that we've inflicted upon each other. We can talk about the good things too, but if we can't acknowledge the bad things, then honestly, we're in deep trouble.
Is it about people like you, filmmakers like you, storytellers like you, doing more of the same? I mean, I've talked to quite a few Indigenous and First Nations folks here, and interviewed many on the podcast actually over the years, and it seems like common consensus. That's way too much of a sweeping generalization, but there seems to be an agreement of a sort that we just need to listen more and hear more, and then not really come up with solutions right out of the gate, because in a way there's sort of not solutions, but it's about that longer term reconciliation and the building of relation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think kind of like on an empathetic level, that makes sense. But it also has to come with sort of systematic change too. And
higher level systematic change, do you think?
well, just like understanding how the political structures work, and I'm sort of, I think we'll always be more steeped in American
Right.
politics. But we can talk, if we're talking about slavery, we can just continue the conversation to understand how the disenfranchisement of African Americans continues with the Supreme Court decision on Voting Rights Act, and just like things like that, and also just the consolidation of media, and which I maybe shouldn't talk about because one of our distributors is, one of the most powerful media companies in the world. But I think that's something that we should be wary of. This the control of the story, because as media gets more and more consolidated, there are fewer avenues and opportunities for stories about indigenous population or about African Americans in the United States to be heard. So there is this moment the last 3-4 years of push for more diversity and acknowledgement of kind of progressive moment in media. But until it sort of manifests itself in a change in the dominant stories that are told, then I will be a skeptic and I'll be pushing for change. So yeah, does that make sense?
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah.
As I was listening to you, I just sort of started thinking about things like, geez, I wonder how hard this film was to get made, and having Al Jazeera behind you must have been helpful. I mean, would you have been noticed by a traditional, not a distributor, but a production company? I mean, I know with documentaries, a lot of times they're self-funded, and they're passion projects and all those things. But it just, I on a certain level, you must be pretty thrilled about the Oscar nom and getting that presence out there and get because isn't that really what you want? You want this story told, but it just feels like on a certain level, boy, we got a long way to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, like though the story, because we were all outsiders who told this story, so I think that fact, it contributed to this sort of lightning in a bottle phenomenon.
Right.
And so like the commissioning producer is, a Malaysian woman from a very working class background who emigrated to the United States.
Hmm.
I was born in Canada. I'm like biracial Muslim, lived most of my adult life in the United States. My co-director is, a woman of color, grew up in the suburbs of Los Angeles. So like, I think the form, and this is what Bruce points out to me, because I'm always like, Bruce, the reason the film succeeds is because of you, because of your story.
Right.
And Bruce says, like, lots of people tried to tell my story, but they couldn't get it right. So I think
Hmm.
there's some sort of alchemy in our
Right.
interaction that allowed us to tell the story the way that we did, and didn't sort of fall into convenient narratives, and
Interesting.
we've had incredible success, and obviously like the for a short documentary like ours to get to the place where it is right now is tremendous. But along the way, you also hear of the rejections that people who had opportunities to distribute the film or to award it, and sort of what they say. And I think those sort of filter back to you through friends who are on film festival juries or whatnot, and it's depressing, honestly. I
Mm.
think like one of the things, it's like how people, especially white Americans, are like unable to understand a black man dealing with his mental health. It sort of like explains kind of the transformative ability of President Obama. Because like
Right.
President Obama was always somebody, he didn't need you, right? He didn't need help. He was like, he had this like remarkable ability just to like, I can just think of like the image of him at some point in the 2008 campaign or whatever, where he's like just dusting off his shoulder. That's like
Right.
Obama. you know
Right.
but that's like
Right.
one in whatever 20 billion. Most of us, um like, life takes a toll on us, especially when we're
Mm.
attacked. Um, and especially for somebody like Bruce, who has this like remarkable empathetic ability and this remarkable storytelling ability, it's tough.
It's really interesting, and sadly, we're going to have to wrap up in a few minutes, and I'm hoping that we can do a part 2 down the road. And Sammy, one of the worst things about being a podcaster is that these conversations have to come to an end. It's at some point, but what I've learned recently is it really is just the beginning of another conversation. I know it sounds sort of trite and corny, but it really is true. But the scene of the battle rapping in the film, and I really wondered where it was going to go. And to be honest with you, I didn't quite get the polarized nature of the politics there, and the back and forth and the nuance. And then at the end, though, they both hugged, and the genuine smiles, and the embodiment of that, that we're still connected. We're still, whatever our differences, we're going to get through. And I felt like that was a real layer to the whole film. I mean, the ending of the march, and I believe that we will win. And like, there's this really sort of positive sense, I suppose. And yet, to your point about Bruce's mental health and how white folks can't understand that, or maybe aren't willing to, or the, ignoring of the facts. And yeah, anyway, so many places we could go with that, and so on one hand really positive, but on another hand, wow, what the challenges we face seem almost insurmountable existentially. Right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it is. It does feel insurmountable, especially at this like dark moment for democracy. But I think I'm heartened by the fact of this kind of solidarity, which is like a kind of a dirty word in some circles, but I think that we have to sort of reinvigorate that idea of solidarity in the sort of the dark political moment we're in, and sort of the kind of cancel culture online, but like, how do we sort of build alliances and support each other, support alliances between working people who are suffering, communities of color, LGBTQ community, women? How do we build this idea of solidarity for people who are struggling, who are oppressed, and sort of move forward? Because otherwise, we're in deep trouble. Like, an unprecedented period of capital consolidation and control, and we have to take back control of that.
Are you? You know what? He sounds like you should be lecturing in a university class. Maybe you are, but
I do have experience as a university lecturer.
That's awesome.
It wasn't. No. I prefer filmmaking, but I do have experience.
Yeah. That's very funny, because there's a couple times where I felt like, oh, geez, I should be taking notes here. I'm going to be tested on
there's going to be a test afterwards. Yeah, David.
Yeah. That's fantastic. No, hey, just on a lighter note, I thought at one point it was a great shot, but and I think he was sort of talking a little bit about his past, and Boyle and Gibson, a great shot. I just thought that could have been a lovely title for the film. With the streets, the intersection of where it all began for him. Are you encouraged? Like, I mean, we talked about dark times and the challenges, and
I am.
Yeah,
I am. I mean, I think, maybe it's an unprecedented moment in human history where the fate of the planet like rests on a knife's edge, not just because of the perils of democracy, but because of climate change,
right?
And sort of how nuclear weapons aren't really a thing anymore. Nobody's like worried about that, which just seems terrifying. But I can share this like little bit of kind of like celebrity gossip of this crazy experience. But I was heartened by the moments of connection, how people have connected to the film. We were at the nominees luncheon on Monday, and Brad Pitt sitting at my table.
Oh, come on!
Totally surreal. But
that's awesome. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be able to connect Brad Pitt with Bruce, and they could talk. And Brad Pitt actually spent some time in Ferguson when he was a boy,
Wow. And was Bruce at the luncheon with you?
He was. Yeah, he was.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And then also sitting across from me, who's been a great champion of our film, is Petra Costa, the Brazilian filmmaker who made The Edge of Democracy.
Oh, wow.
And she's been amazing. Her film is amazing. So it kind of, I'm excited by the way sort of the avenues that filmmakers have like forged for themselves. They're like they even though the media is like really consolidated, there are like so many great kind of like, not to use this, I know this can be a dirty word, but sort of political films that are nominated for Academy Awards, and like really political films like The Edge of Democracy and An American Factory and The Cave and For Sama. They're very, very political films. So I'm heartened by that.
For Sama, for me, I interviewed them before. I guess it was before Hot Docs. I was in a couple weeks out, and I'll never forget finishing the film and saying to my wife Elizabeth, within seconds, "You wait, Oscar nom for sure." Could be one of the most unsettling films I've seen in years, and was able to interview both of them, and it was terrific. And yeah, anyway, you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, it's Sisyphus, right? We're rolling the rock up the hill, and this is why, and again, congratulations, and so cool that you've been nominated, and I hope that doesn't jinx you in some weird way. I hope you're not superstitious, but
no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not superstitious.
I hope I'm watching you accepting the award. And when is it? In a couple of weeks' time?
No, it's in like a week. It's in
a week,
8 days. Yeah.
I'm actually, if all goes well, I'm going to be in Myanmar. So,
nice.
I'm heading to Myanmar and then to Cambodia, as long as this wretched coronavirus doesn't blow everything out of proportion, and it seems to be going that way. But anyway, well, I sadly we've got to wrap it up. But I wish you well with it. I mean, we could talk more about so many more things we could talk about. And I maybe just lastly, I mean, were you able to get Brad Pitt to say he's going to help fund your next film?
No.
Oh,
but
come on.
my job.
Slip him a little note as he was leaving. Yeah.
My job was to introduce Bruce to Brad Pitt, and I kind of just slipped into the background. I'm a filmmaker, so I was taking pictures. But he asked for Bruce's card. He took Bruce's card, and within hours, Brad Pitt's assistant had emailed Bruce and to ask for the film. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Amazing. Listen, it's and as yes, like you say, celebrity gossip and so on and so forth, but it's still, no matter what, it's access. And there's something about that enables you now. The film's going to be seen by more people, and with this Oscar nomination, right? And as crazy as the whole ceremonial side of it is, and all the politics behind it, and so on, and all the money that drives it, it's still pretty darn cool. And so yeah, congrats. And I'm gonna end with I think a quote from Bruce: "We finally got it through."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, isn't that a great kind of metaphor? There's so many beautiful metaphors in the film too. And yeah, I just want to say thanks again for your time today. What is hey, what's next for you?
So I am just in the final stages of a feature documentary, which is about 3 Cuban baseball players. So maybe in a couple of months we'll be talking about that. So.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
that's tuned. Awesome. So basically, I don't have to say coming soon to a theater near you. I don't have to say coming soon to video on demand. This St. Louis Superman is in the theaters right now. Get out and see it. And hopefully going to be everywhere and very accessible soon, I would imagine, through a variety of different global distributors. Sami, thank you so much for your time today. We've been talking with Sami Khan about his brilliant new documentary, St. Louis Superman. And again, wishing you well with it all.
Great. Thank you, David.